All right, welcome to our 3:30 session. We have Stephen Ray Feller speaking on Japanese American Relocation Center Monies of World War II. Stephen Ray have previously written on internment and concentration camp money in Europe, and have recently started researching internment camp money from the United States, and have traveled to some of these locations. So with that, Ray, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having us, and we're excited to talk about this important topic. And just to say, this is a very difficult part of our country's history, but a really important thing for us to not forget. And our feeling is that these monies help to tell the story of what life was like in these places. All right, Dad, I will let you kick it off.
So Ray's going to be advancing the slides. We've divided this up. We have quite a few slides, so bear with us. We now know more about the story. If Ray can advance. First, we will acknowledge the Newman Numismatic Portal for financial support, and it's located at Washington University in St. Louis. All right, next. So this is a map of the 48 states showing the Japanese American. The slide describes it as imprisonments, which I think is accurate. There are many different kinds of camps. We are mainly focused on the triangles. Those are called relocation centers. But we're also going to talk about assembly centers, which are on the West Coast, from which the people who had been thrown out of their houses on that exclusion zone on the West eventually were sent. Well, they were immediately sent to the assembly centers, and then eventually to these relocation centers. We are going to have a special focus on the two easternmost ones in Arkansas, and they're only about 15 miles apart from each other at Jerome and Rower. That's what they told me is the correct pronunciation, sort of almost like one syllable. And the National Japanese American Internment Camp Museum is in between those two triangles in Arkansas at McGee. So we'll talk about that. Next slide. So this very famous notice, dated May 7th, 1942, was a direct result of the attack on Pearl Harbor, December the 7th, 1941, the date that will live in infamy according to President Roosevelt. And it didn't take long before a form of hysteria took over, and even Japanese American citizens were rounded up, separated from their homes, and brought to the assembly centers. And so this is a notice to what's called Japanese persons of Japanese ancestry. So go ahead, Ray. So you can see that in California, this is a grocery store originally owned by a Japanese American family. I am an American, although the owner put that on the store, it didn't matter in the end. Or, whoa, Ray's rolling here. Or the Nisei Grill. Stop right there, Ray. This restaurant under new management will open soon. So again, this one had been taken over as well. So lots of people lost their livelihoods, they lost their homes, they lost many of their goods because they had to travel light and quickly. Go ahead, Ray. So the assembly centers were temporary places to stay. For example, racetracks, large areas, even in tents. Not the most comfortable way to start their journey in World War II. So the next slide, right? So these are the assembly centers in 1942, giving you the location and the number of people. And as you can see, if you add it all up, it's on the order of 100,000 people. And these were done with in less than a year in 1942. Every single one of the camps. Okay, next. Oh, I should mention on the last one. One of the assembly centers became a relocation camp at Manzanar in California. Okay. So, lots of memories have been written about this. Lots of reports and statements. Here's one from a family. Henry went to the control station to register the family and came home with 20 tags, all numbered 10,710. Tags to be attached to each piece of baggage and one to hang from our coat lapels. From then on, we were known as family number 10,710. Next story. And not too long from now, Ray's going to say it's her turn. So be prepared. So here's a family tagged up. Everything was tagged. Human beings tagged as luggage, I guess. Go ahead. And so there was a ship mainly by train. And there you can see the Japanese Americans, not exclusively, but mostly Japanese Americans with U.S. Army troops by a train. Go ahead. Even though no evacuee was required to work, the WCCA had planned that assembly center operations should be carried out principally by the evacuees. There was the standard round of jobs from doctor to janitor. Evacuees also assisted WCCA administrators. Over 27,000 evacuees, more than 30% of them, worked in center administration. That's a little top-heavy, I would say, on administration. The appropriate payment for these services was a matter of some difficulty. At first, there was no pay. Eventually, evacuees were nominally compensated for work actually done and given subsistence, shelter, and a small money allowance. General Dewitt established the following wage schedule. Unskilled work, $8 a month. Skilled, $12 a month. Professional and technical, $16 per month. Subsistence, shelter and hospitalization, medical and dental care were to be furnished without cost. These low wages and allowances were a source of continuing dissatisfaction among evacuees. And in fact, the pay was quite similar to what POWs got. POWs got 10 cents an hour or $4 a week. Yeah. Okay. The wage scale immediately became controversial and remained so. Public opinion dictated that wages should be low. Evacuees demanded a higher scale. They saw themselves as victims of a misguided, hysterical war reaction and utterly undeserving of treatment different from that of any of other Americans. We'll come back to that point later, by the way. Moreover, the system caused severe financial hardship. Evacuees could not afford to meet even their minimal needs inside the centers. Sometimes the barest essentials in the Sears catalog, such as shoes for the children, were out of reach. Meeting their outside obligations, such as mortgage payments, was impossible unless they already had savings or income producing property. And it was insulting. At WRA, that's the War Relocation Administration, a librarian received $167 a month, while her evacuee staff received $16 a month, 10 times less. Despite the agitation, the system was never changed. By the time it might have been, the WRA was encouraging evacuees to leave the centers and did not want to create an incentive to stay. Yeah, right. So this, again, we found is a restatement of the pay rates for the different kinds of jobs. You can see the lowest $8 per month, laborers, dishwashers, mess hall attendants, junior clerks, and so on. The skilled classification paid at the rate of $12 a month, accountants, senior clerks, playground directors, nurses, and so on. And the professional and technical group, whose compensation was $16 per month, included physicians, surgeons, dentists, engineers, and so on. Must be understood that no evacuee was required to work, but once he accepted a job, he was expected to carry it out, except in case of illness. To sever his employment, an evacuee was required to give a 48-hour notice of intent in writing. Yeah, right. So again, this is a restatement of the three pay rates for 40 hours a week. Go ahead, Ray.
So at this point, reading through this document, which I mean, this is probably something that I was looking through back in 2020, as I recall, because I think this was in the heavy COVID Zoom times. So reading along, and then came across this reference where they're talking about the services that are available in the camp. So services such as shoe repair shops, barber and beauty shop service. And it says they're obtainable in exchange for coupons only, that you couldn't use cash, and that evacuees who wanted to purchase extra coupon books could then use those also at the canteen. So this was, for us, the first sign that there was more to the numismatic story of what were these coupons, what were the coupon books, what was the system that was taking place inside the camps. And for those who have heard us talk or have researched on their own or read on their own about the ways that the camps were functioning in Europe, there's some similarity where people weren't using regular cash that you could use outside of the camp system. So here, these are details about needing to keep track of the coupons. These are details about the monthly allowance that people were given, the things that were provided, but also the things that weren't, and including this allowance for people who weren't or couldn't work, including kids. And so then here, we found this photo of evacuees getting their coupon books at the assembly center. And you can see there are signs explaining how the coupons should work. The coupons which have been detached from coupon books shall not be accepted and shall be considered of no value. This is very similar to the way the books worked in the POW camps in the United States. And this one says, no sales shall be made from canteens except with coupons. And this is just an interesting quote. So you saw that the children got an allowance. So this says, the food mentioned in the petition, which is bought for the children from the canteen, is principally candy. Having just gone through Halloween with my family, that seems about right. So here, this is in one of the assembly centers. You can see people at the canteen, and this is a display of candy bars. So then, trying to figure out what these looked like and trying to understand the broader story, we started looking. There's actually amazing access now to newspapers from the camps. Many, if not most of them, have been are now accessible online, and you can actually search for keywords. So we started looking through and finding references to coupon books. So this is from Portland also, that the photo was just from. You can see coupon book setup revised, and it goes into details about how the coupon system is going to work. This one, also from Portland, coupon books to be issued with a new setup. And they go into detail about, it sounds like it was fairly chaotic at first with trying to hand out these books. I mean, you saw the numbers. This is a lot of people in these sites. And so trying to make sure that everybody's accessing the things that they need. Here's another. This one is from Santa Anita in California, saying that they're announcing free coupon books that they're going to be giving out. This is from Pinedale, also in California. So again, these are the initial assembly centers before everything is has been worked out for the longer term camps. So they're sort of figuring this out as they go, but you can see that they created these newspapers. They're updating people. $5,500 in wages given out on first payday. And here again, free coupon books to be issued soon. And explaining the details of how you would get them. This is from another of the camps in California. Free coupon books are ending the next day. Here's a call for late free coupons for the people who apparently didn't read the issue before. This is in Turlock, free coupon books issued. These are examples to show sort of it's interesting that we had never heard of these coupon books, but obviously this was a big part of how things were functioning. So after much searching and accessing a lot of the online resources we could find, we were at last able to find some examples of what these coupon books looked like. So these you can see are for the assembly center stores. This one has 2 of the coupons still there. You can see that it was issued and countersigned in April of 1942.
July.
July? Looks like a 4. My handwriting's not that good, so I relate. Here's another one. You can see on the back there's the name Kei Takemoto. So it looks like a fairly standard issue. It doesn't say which place. You can see that the value for the whole book was $2.50. And here on the inside with 1 coupon left. I should keep track of where I am. Okay. So this is a quote. A lot of these quotes come from this report about the activities from the wartime relocation and internment. So this is a quote saying, "Securing everyday necessities was difficult. Most evacuees had brought their own clothing, but a few, either because of poverty or because they had not anticipated the climate, did not own appropriate clothes." Now, part of this is because people didn't necessarily know where they were going, and California does have very different weather than if you ended out in Idaho, for example. So they provided a clothing allowance. And you can see it says the centers had canteens, though often there was nothing to buy, and everything else was ordered from mail order houses. And this, again, actually similar to the POW camps, we heard that the Sears Roebuck and Co. catalog was one of the most essential pieces because that was a way to be ordering the things that weren't going to be easily available in the canteen. And here you can see is an ad from the Manzanar camp that specifically says that they can ship with local zone postal rates to Manzanar specifically. So this is a quote from the American Red Cross at the time, noticing that families they lost a lot basically because they had to make these quick moves. They often weren't able to sell things for their actual value or even close to their actual value, or sometimes had to just give things away. And so they are now dipping into their savings, trying to get these coupon books so that they can get their needs met, but they don't know what's going to happen when the money's gone and what's going to happen when the war is done. Now, this is an interesting reference. So because we had never seen any of these coupon books, it's just interesting, this quote that's specifically saying, you're not going to be able to use these coupon. So this is as they're moving people from the assembly camp centers to the camps. So now they're saying, you're not going to be able to use these coupons once you leave, so you should spend them now. So presumably a lot of people went through and made sure they spent everything and therefore didn't save them for us to find later. So another really interesting thing that we started to learn as we read through these newspapers was about the co-op system. There was a encouragement, sort of a benefit in both directions for the people running the camps if they had the internees in charge of their own systems and markets and so on. Then that sort of took the blame off of them. There had been in various places, we heard reports of complaints about the kinds of groceries, for instance, that they were bringing in. They didn't really understand the tastes of the Japanese people. They were asking for things like tofu and rice, and they were mucking it all up. So on the one hand, a co-op system where the internees were in charge would allow them to have a say, which benefited both sides because they got the things they actually wanted. And it ended out being something, interestingly, that benefited people after the war. There were people who continued to participate in this system. So the co-ops started, there's a Quaker man who went around and encouraged this and helped people set them up. So now we start to see newspaper references to the co-op system and to, here you can see actually they're talking specifically about scrip that they were making for the co-op. There was an effort to try to make things fair. So if there was a shortage of, we read one example of a soap shortage, that they didn't want it to be that whoever had money got the soap. They wanted to make it fair. So they split up the soap evenly. And then sort of rationed it with these special coupons. So we're here reading again about how there were clearly special issues, special scrip that had to do with the co-op system. So here, this is in the Amachi, I'm not sure of the pronunciation, camp, but this is their co-op. And this up here actually is the symbol for the co-op, the little trees. So here's another quote. This one comes from an oral history and talking about this. So one of the systems they had, and if people participate in co-ops, or it might even be a little similar to if you have a CVS card and you sort of get to save up and then you get a discount the next time you come. So they were told that if they saved the stubs from their purchases, these little receipts, that those would be what you would use to get your earnings from the co-op. So apparently at first people didn't really take it seriously or didn't really understand how it was going to work. And so they didn't worry about it. And then it turned out that this janitor who was cleaning up the floor, we kept finding all of these coupons. So he saved them all and ended up with $3,000 worth of the stubs, which gave him apparently $300 then back. So after this story was told, people were much better about keep holding on to their stubs. And here you can see this is from sort of like a scrapbook of the co-op. And this is describing the way that the co-op was organized. And all of this then was done by the Japanese internees and Japanese American internees. Here you can see another example. And here you can see they're talking specifically, this is in Tool Lake, about co-op scrip and about when you can buy it and how you can get it and what you can use it for. So again, we're using these newspapers to help us tell this story and understand this story. Here's another with scrip book purchases, and they're going to not be taxable. This is in Tool Lake again. And here we are in Tool Lake again. Residents not to bring scrip covers with their stubs. So now that we know that there's this big story, special shoe stamps, there are all these things that we know are happening. So then we're trying different ways to figure out, where are these things? Are there any examples left? And we were able to use a fantastic resource in California that has an amazing online database, and did actually find, this is an example from Tool Lake, which those last several articles were about, of one of the co-op, the receipts. So you can see at the bottom, it says Tool Lake Co-op valuable, save for patron something refund. Very, very simple. And you can, what's that?
It's patronage.
Patronage. Very, very simple. And you can imagine why these wouldn't have survived for, very far after the war. First of all, you would turn it in order to get your refund. And second of all, I mean, these are like scraps of paper. But this one you can see was taped into somebody's scrapbook. Here, this is for another of the camps that had, most of the camps had co-ops. I think all 10. You can see that symbol again for the co-op. This has the bylaws in it. Here you can see this is a scarf. And so now this in Minidoka in Idaho, you can see here's the staff of the co-op, men and women. there was actually, they made a point of saying that both men and women should be able to work in jobs equally. And then one other piece of sort of interest along these kinds of lines here is a receipt for getting a patronage stamp book. This is for the blue stamps. There are different colors that are referenced in the newspapers. Actually, Minidoka, there are a lot of details in their newspaper as well. We're trying to be somewhat efficient with this talk, so you can't see all of them, but here's someone who's got a receipt for purchasing their book. And then this is a movie ticket for Minidoka, where somebody has paid a total of 10 cents between the admission and the tax to go in to see a movie. Then I get to pass it back to you, Dad.
Okay. So, due to a grant from the Newman Numismatic Portal, we recently took a trip with a co-college student, her name is Katie, to see 2 of the campsites and the National Museum, which is in eastern Arkansas, a very rural area near the Mississippi River. So the first thing you can see in this slide is an announcement from an assembly center in California that they now know where they're going from that center. They're going to Jerome, one of the 2 campsites in eastern Arkansas. So they knew they were going to be relocated, and the headline on the paper as well, we're going to Jerome. Jerome was one of the last camps to form. I think it was the last one, and it was the first one to close. There were 10 relocation centers in the United States. Again, mainly for Japanese Americans. Okay, now we can go forward, Ray. From one of the residents, this is a quote from the other camp at Roar. Roar was far enough south to catch Gulf Coast hurricanes, far enough north to catch Midwestern tornadoes, close enough to the Mississippi River to be inundated by Mississippi Valley floods, and lush enough to be the haven for every creepy, crawly creature and pesky insect in the world. Sounds like a delightful sight. It was when we were there, but so this is what's left of Roar. There's a sign by the edge of the road, Roar Japanese American Relocation Center. There's a model of a guardhouse when you turn off the road. And the road on the right then is from the actual road on the highway. What you're looking at is the campsite today. Enormous, nothing left except that clump of trees in the distance. They have various memorials there, which we'll show you a little bit of. And that's my car, my rental car. Ray and my granddaughter Momo and Katie walked up to the site. Also at the Aurora is this smokestack from the hospital, which was used to incinerate and sterilize things. That's really the last structure remaining from the camp. But if you walk up to the that clump of trees, there are maybe 5 or 6 memorials. One on the left is a very curious shape. It's a memorial with a tank underneath it in recognition of the 442nd Regimental Infantry Unit, the most decorated one in American history, by the way, composed of Japanese Americans who fought in Europe in World War II. They were amazing, actually. If we can go to the next slide. This is Jerome. They also have their smokestack. And you're looking at the camp site itself. So you have many, many hundreds of acres. And Jerome has less than Roar does. It has this one memorial stone. Jerome Relocation Center, 1942 to 44. I should mention that after 1944, Jerome became a prisoner of war camp after it was emptied of Japanese Americans. Okay, so we went to see the sites. This is a map of Jerome that we found at the museum, giving the details of the barracks. Look at all the barracks. We'll come back to the barracks in a second. And what they were called. You have the high school, We actually found high school yearbooks at the museum. Advertisements, we'll show you that in a second, with ads, if you can believe it, from the local businesses outside the camp. Church and store, elementary school, and so on. Okay, today that memorial is on that street on the bottom, and nothing else except the hospital. You can see the hospital area off to the right. That's where the smokestack was. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Then in the middle of the two campsites is the depot where the internees came on the trains. The tracks are still used for freight. And this is called the Jerome Rohr Interpretive Museum and Visitor Center. And we spend a lot of time inside of that. So go ahead, Ray. There's the youngest and the oldest researcher. I think, so Momo, this is her first research trip, and I think Ray was wise here. She got to come to the museum with us. She drew images of what she saw. She wrote down her impressions just to get a little bit involved. She was a good trooper. And she's wearing, as I'm wearing, one of the museum t-shirts that I bought. Okay. So Rohr, these are some of their statistics. You can see this is for the period of a quarter of the year. Total sales almost $70,000, and it's broken down and so on. This plans laid for philatelists. Man, I wish I could attend the meeting. Patrons warned not to lose or discard used coupon books, the same kind of stuff that Ray showed before from the assembly centers. This is a relocation camp. So you can see coupon books are now sold at the canteen on blocks 5, 9, 15, 28, 38, and 41. Go ahead. In the museum, then, this is a souvenir of one of the inmates, explaining that he was at the Rohr branch near McGee, Arkansas. I know it looks like McGee. It's pronounced McGee. Okay. Go ahead, Ray. Birth certificate in one of the many stacks of documents. U.S. government printing office. You know, it's I would argue that's somewhat numismatic anyway, announcing the birth inside the camp. Now, the clothing allowance is interesting because there are coupons associated with that, as there were at other camps. So they definitely needed clothes. They wrote about it frequently. Go ahead, Ray. Ration books. So by ration books here, we're talking about U.S. Ration books of the standard design used outside the camp by American citizens everywhere and within the camp. Persons who do not have War Ration Book 1 or who have not filed applications for shoe certificates, another form of money, which we'd love to see, should do so immediately, stated Assistant Project Director James F. Raines. This applies especially to those who are planning on relocation, since it requires 2 to 3 weeks to get the books. So that was interesting. And then here is in the museum an actual ration card. Notice it's in a Japanese American name and the location, the Jerome Relocation Center, some kind of address. Now Jerome technically is in the town of Denson, Arkansas, and in the county of Chillicothe in Arkansas. And some of the war ration stamps are still in the booklet. So this is a, you know, this with money will buy you stuff, just like it was outside the camp. Go ahead. And signed by the holder of the book. Go ahead.
So one of the interesting things about this trip, which we were talking to Len about a little bit before everyone came on, was that it's a fantastic museum. I mean, they've really done a nice job. They're very friendly. And actually for being in a very small town in Arkansas, it was fairly active. There were people coming and going. We were there for basically 2 full days and saw lots of people who were visiting, which is good, really, really great. But they basically just had things out. So they had some displays that they had made. And then as people, perhaps people pass away and then their family says, I don't know what to do with this stuff. And so there were just piles and piles of scrapbooks just sitting out. So we were actually, you can see in these 2 pictures that that's my thumb, holding these documents, but we were able to actually go through and find all kinds of things, not knowing what we might or might not find. So one thing that we came across was a series of these, and we just have a few examples here. These are showing people's changes in jobs. So this one is a termination notice. This is for Eunice Yokota, and she was a mimeograph operator at $16 an hour, and now she's being terminated so she can fill the vacancy of a reporter to the Denson Tribune, which is the local newspaper. And so here, this is her again. This is a notice of assignment to report for work. She's going to be an interviewer. Interestingly, that's less money per month. But maybe there were other reasons that job would be more appealing. Here's another one. This is her again, change of pay status. Now she's actually going from $12 to $16 a month again, for her job. And so there were lots of these explanations of people having these job shifts that tell us something about this story. We also found this. This is a little ticket for Block 44 to go to a birthday ball in the Block 44 dining hall. Now it's worth, we showed the pictures of the wide open spaces, but just to wrap your minds around, these camps had thousands of people again. So there wouldn't have been one dining hall. There were multiple dining halls. There were lots of barracks. The fact that she lived on Block 44 tells you something, or that whoever this was that's having the party had, it was a big place with a lot that needed to be organized and arranged. This is an invitation. This is for Eunice again. So obviously these are a lot of things from the same scrapbook. To go to the motor pool repair section shop warming. They're going to have game, refreshment, and dance in Mess Hall 36. Here, actually, this isn't that dance, but this is a dance nearby. These are at a military camp nearby, a dance. And here's another interesting thing. It's a raffle ticket with the prizes being luggage sets, which probably makes some sense. There are additional prizes, but those are the big prizes for that day. And now, while we're also thinking about the sort of life at these camps, another interesting piece is, and you may have heard about this or seen, there's a really nicely done movie that we watched on the trip, actually, called American Pastime. But there was a lot of people had time on their hands, and they took on a lot of organization around sports, and in particular baseball. So this is pretty cool. This is a photo from the camp of a baseball game, and here you see an article in the paper saying that they're going to be playing against Camp Shelby. So that's a military camp nearby. They're going to have a game against them between their all-star team and actually you can see, the schedule. They've got various teams playing softball, baseball. So this was another area where we were very curious about if there were any tickets left, and in fact did find this example of a ticket from this particular exchange of game between the 100th Infantry at Camp Shelby and the Center All-Stars. So this was another document that we found there that goes through sort of a tongue-in-cheek history of the Jerome Co-op. It actually is the narrative is supposed to be somebody imagining that how she would tell her great-grandchildren about what happened. But it describes how they started out. They had $150 worth of soap, soda, and insect spray. And they went from that to a business that made $45,000 a month. And by the time they were writing this history, they had two general stores, a dry goods store, a ration goods store, a barbershop, a laundry, a radio shop, two shoe repair shops, a movie department, a central warehouse, a beauty salon, a dry cleaners, film developing, newspaper subscriptions, and an optical service. They do say in here specifically that all 10 centers had co-ops, and that actually all of the co-ops came together and had a relocation center cooperative congress in Chicago to talk about how they were all functioning, and that in fact the Jerome co-op won the high efficiency rating, or run for their highest efficiency rating compared to the other co-ops after their first year. And here, as part of that, is a picture. This is from a scrapbook from a teacher, actually, who she wasn't Japanese American. She was from Arkansas, and she kept a scrapbook. She went and taught the kids in the camp, and she called this the most popular place, the canteen. And here you can see another photo from the inside of the canteen. Got clothing here. This is actually from a video that they had, which was pretty interesting, and shows people at the canteen shopping. And this was interesting. It's a little cartoon that's explaining the difference between how a profit store works and how a co-op store works with the dividends. You can see in the profit store there, that guy goes and takes the money away, but in the co-op store, you get to come out with your dividends. So this, again, we're looking at these scrapbooks. They're just piles of things. And this is one of those coupons that we had been searching for, I think for about, maybe 4 years of looking in different places, trying to just see what an example would be. And here one was just sitting in like a plastic sheet, like in a binder, just among the documents piled into one of the plastic pages, one of these co-op coupons. This one we found through a library online, but this is a purchase receipt from a mail order from the mail order department. And here, another thing that we found through a library online is a comptroller's voucher from Jerome. And you can see that it specifically references the Jerome Cooperative. And then this is it. So one of the things that's amazing about being able to actually go to a place is that you do learn things that you would otherwise not learn, including that there were these items that aren't recorded, including that it was actually interesting just talking to the people there and finding out that everybody we talked to knew about the camps. They knew where they were. They knew that it had happened. They knew that it was shameful that it had happened. And so we ended up going on this very interesting tour of Arkansas City, where we were staying with someone who's a bit of, I would say, a local celebrity, who ended up being the Arkansas Speaker of the House. And so this, in the museum, this was a paper model of what the barracks looked like. And we had read that there were no more of these buildings left, that there had been one that had been a museum and had been torn down, and that was the last one. But he sort of casually told us that actually the barracks were used for all kinds of things, that people, at the time, it was available, building materials after the war. And so people just took them and used them. And so he told us that part of his house had been made out of some of these barracks. And then he asked if we wanted to see a building, and we said, sure. And he literally took us about a block away from where we were staying to this church that's unfortunately been abandoned. And you can see that this part of the church they literally took a barracks building from the camp and had it and added it as an addition to the church. You can see the windows and the doors. It goes actually into the church. So it sort of cuts off a little bit early. But once we saw that, then when we went back and looked at photos, we could see that you can absolutely see that they're the same building. And he said they're all over the place, which was a very interesting thing. And another discovery, my dad will share.
Okay. So before we get to this, there was one question I saw in the Q&A from Robert Hogue. asking about videos. If there were videos, and why we haven't shown them. The answer is there are videos, and we are going to show. I believe, right, Ray? Don't we have a video coming up?
We're gonna have one video that we will show.
There are lots of videos probably of the camp, but we have one good one, as you'll see, especially relevant to numismatics. So yes, there are videos. So this story is basically when the war was winding down and you had the Japanese Americans in these 10 camps, the Wilson farm, it was called Wilson Plantation, had a commissary, and the farm itself invited Japanese Americans to stay in Arkansas and work at the farm. So the inmates of the relocation camp were invited to go to, not just this camp, but all 10 camps, were invited to go to Wilson, Arkansas, and they had coins for use at the commissary at the Wilson Plantation. You can see these were donated by the proud producer of McGee Gin, Donna Watts. So let's take a look at the money. So these are from the Wilson commissary. And first we saw this right inside the exhibit area of the museum. And then I made the connection in the back part of the museum, which has a whole description, of which this is a small part of it, of the Wilson. It's called the Wilson brochure, the Wilson Plantation in Wilkin, Arkansas. It's an advertisement. Opportunities for EC and EC, sharecrop or rent. There are many farming and other types of opportunities for Japanese Americans, so they knew they were Americans, in the state of Arkansas. So here they have labor that's going to leave Arkansas. So this industrious Wilson Plantation got the good idea, oh, well, wait a second, stay here and work here. And look at the advertisement about Arkansas, known as the Wonder State. This title was given to Arkansas when it was learned that it has virtually every natural resource known, and agriculturally produces some of everything that is grown between the Great Lakes and the Gulf of Mexico. By the way, Momo, researcher who was the youngest, observed cotton being grown, and we sort of solved the mystery. We saw all sorts of cotton on the edges of the roads, besides in the fields. And then we realized that when the cotton is shipped in bales by truck, some of the cotton leaks out of the bales, and it was lining both sides of the road. So now Ray, the Momo has a little collection of Arkansas cotton. Okay, if you go on to the next slide, Ray. So when Jerome closed as a relocation center in 1944, it became a prisoner of war camp for Germans, not German Americans. Now we're talking about prisoners of war. Now, a few things struck me about this. This was obtained from a numismatic friend of mine who might be watching this, I don't know. What struck me about it was on the bottom is the printer, Weldon, Williams, and Lick, Fort Smith, Arkansas. And in fact, the next slide will show this to you. And this occurred on 2 covers. I'll get to the second cover in a second, but the first one was for the Jerome POW camp, or as they called it back then, PW camp. Well, a little internet search revealed that, in fact, this company is still in business. Having been founded in the 19th century, it is now 125 years old. So naturally, an email and a phone call resulted to find out what there was to find out. They don't have records anymore of it. But the building in which the Cupid, there it is. That building is the original building where the coupons were made. So that building predates World War II. And so you can see the Jerome, Arkansas coupon book cover. And then I noticed in our talk that we had an enemy aliens camp at Lordsburg, New Mexico. These were, in fact, Japanese and German citizens who were interned. And in fact, it was also printed in Arkansas, this set of notes. So you can see my little description there. So that's a numismatic place. Here then are the Jerome PW camp notes. That's a complete set. Also obtained from my numismatic friend from Missouri. I'll say that much. And now we go forward again.
Just noting, Dad, that we have 10 minutes, so we must be efficient.
We're doing pretty well, though.
Fairly well.
All right, keep going. We're going to enter now. Oh, are you doing this one, right?
No, this is you.
Okay. So for enemy aliens, then the Immigration and Naturalization Service ran centers. And there was money at those centers. So we're leaving now the Japanese American camps, and we're going to the Japanese, German, and Italian citizen camps with some American citizens at them. Kids, basically. So go ahead. So the INS held about 32,000 people, of whom 17,477 were of Japanese ancestry. They were housed in 65 different facilities, mainly in New Mexico and in Texas. The biggest one was at Crystal City, Texas, which we have reported on before. We're not going to go through the whole story of Crystal City, Texas, but we are going to show you a few things. Go ahead, Ray. So this is a beer card from that same camp in Lordsburg, New Mexico, from the enemy alien camp, another form of money. It's amazing. Once we focused on these camps, there's all sorts of numismatic stuff. Go ahead. There's that cover again, produced in Arkansas. So these are the Seagoville tokens now. You can see it says Seagoville Internment Camp. These are produced by the Immigration and Naturalization Service. Go ahead. And they're made out of something like Bakelite, plastic, hard plastic. Go ahead, Ray. We're moving forward here. So then we went to Crystal City, Texas. Is this what you're gonna do, Ray, or remind me?
Yeah, I'll do a little bit of it. I thought Segoville was the cardboard.
It's not cardboard. It's more like plastic.
All right,
Okay.
so
Go ahead.
we're gonna maybe not be super detailed, but we did also get through another grant to visit Crystal City. I would say 9.5 years ago, based on the fact that this is Leonardo, my son, in my belly right there, what turned out to be about a week before he was born. Crystal City, you can see, is currently a population of 8,000. Oops, wrong direction. Of 8,623 people. So not a big place. The spinach capital of the country or the world, I actually don't remember. Spinach capital, which is why Popeye is there. And it was the site of a very interesting camp. It was a family camp. So it was a combination of people of Japanese and German, and a few Italian people who were there with their families. So they had been captured, and there were agreements made for their families to be able to join them at this camp. The other camps that we talked about had families all together the whole time, but this was a little bit of a different situation because they had to make agreements in some cases saying that they were willing to be sent back to their home countries in order to be together. So here you can see this is again very big. This has a very interesting feature, which is the swimming pool. They actually had 3 different schools. They had a German school, a Japanese school, and a federal school, so people could choose which to send their children to. And here is a more funny map, including the prickly pears, the cockroaches, and the blister bugs, and the giant grasshoppers. This again, these are places that are in the middle of nowhere on purpose to make it less reasonable for someone to escape. Not that there were any cases of people trying to escape anyway, but that was the theory. These are photos from the time that are in color of the camp. This is us with friends Larry and Prue of blessed memory visiting the site, and you can see on this board here they have examples of the money from the camp that were these plastic discs. Here we have airmail that's coming in. Interestingly, I don't remember the story of this, and actually I might not take time with it, but you can see civilian mail coming through Crystal City. And there's the
citizens of South America who the U.S. took in to intern at Crystal City.
Specifically from Peru. And then Peru didn't want them back, and it's a long story. There's the belly again. What's that?
Which one?
That's the lean. That's, oh yeah, your belly is great. So this is an example of clothing tokens from Crystal City. And here's a quote: "We also had no problems with clothing. We were issued special tokens to purchase clothing. For other items or to pay for service-related expenses, separate types of tokens were issued. With the different tokens, one could go to a beauty shop to have a permanent or go to a shop to buy a watermelon." And there are actually a lot of really interesting stories, but I'm going to refrain from telling them because I want to make time to be able to share this, especially because it was asked about. This is part of a video that's available on YouTube. So take a look.
And here they are, ready for distribution to the hospital. There are a few samples of clothing from the sewing project. We permitted them to charge a small fee. In the clothing store, we provided a very restricted variety of low-cost articles of essential clothing. Plastic camp money with which they could purchase these articles was issued to them in accordance with the size and needs of the family. Each family had an annual ration card which was punched as purchases were made.
So there you can see that is actual footage of people using these, using those clothing tokens in the store. That video has actually footage also of the canteen, and again, people using the tokens that were given. But I'll let my dad continue the story here.
Okay. So, one second here. I'm looking for where the, oh, here it is. Sorry. Where is the slideshow?
I can tell you these are the tokens from Crystal City. Do you want to just describe them?
One second. I'm going to.
You could press Alt Tab, and that should take you to.
I see them. I'm trying to get them up here. There it is. This? Okay. So these are the, again, tokens issued for Crystal City in hard plastic, going from 1 cent up to $5. Go ahead, Ray. So this is from a heritage auction. It went for pretty good money. A $5 token. These are not common. Go ahead, Ray. And you can see an alien detention station, Crystal City, Texas. All right, Ray. So this is a mention of from the Geneva Convention that internees did not have to work, but if they did work, they got the same pay as PWs at 10 cents per hour. I should mention that Joe Bowling mentioned that to his, in the question and answer, that apparently earlier on we showed another Western U.S. booklet printed in Arkansas. So I have to take a look at that. That was very observant, Joe. And he also says that his brother, who lived in an elementary school that had been sold for whatever use one wanted to make of it in Hazleton, Idaho, had 2 of the buildings from Minidoka on the property used as storage sheds. So thank you for that, Joe. All right, keep going, Ray. I'm not going to read this. This is again describing the tokens the enemy alien camps. Basically, our family never once suffered from any lack of food. There was adequate meat and fish. We could even afford the luxury of having sashimi with our bare ration. That sounds pretty good to me. In the beginning, we were issued long grain rice, which we were not accustomed to, but later someone knowledgeable about rice negotiated to have California rice and Arkansas rice brought in, and soon we had a more familiar Japanese-style rice. And they even traded with the German camp, German attorneys, which had a separate area within Crystal City. Okay, Ray. So we fast forward to 1988 with President Ronald Reagan, and the U.S. There's a long history behind the legality of these camps. Supreme Court actually ruled that the camps were legal. During the war, a suit was brought. But by the 1980s, under President Reagan and President Bush, an apology and a payment was made to the Japanese Americans who were interned. And so here you can see it. This is a letter we found at the museum, basically saying that this particular person was going to get, this recipient, a payment of $20,000. It's called the redress payment. And it was President Bush who actually who gave out the money. And so they got a U.S. government check for $20,000. And you can see the date of this one is October 1st, 1992. Keep going, Ray. And the last slide, and then we'll take questions. Then it's exactly 3:31 in Iowa, so 4:31 on the East Coast, so we're pretty close. I love this picture of Katie showing Momo, my granddaughter, Ray's daughter, some of the pictures in the scrapbook. Isn't that a great picture of doing research on site? I can't imagine a better one with the book there impounded, which is a play on words because it was by a photographer whose photographs were impounded. The people were impounded, but the photographs were impounded by the U.S. government for being telling too much truth.
Too sympathetic, they said.
Yeah. Okay. So with that, Len, we're ready for questions and answers.
All right, so if you have questions, please enter them into the chat and we'll get those going.
We've had a few.
So,
Just out of curiosity, we didn't get to see anybody. We know that people are out there. We got a few comments. Do we
Like
have
20,
we've got
22 people, Dan.
25 in the audience is my count.
Okay. All right. Oh, I see that now. It says participants 25.
I'm trying to show this book that Stephen Ray previously wrote on the World War II, but my background is not cooperating. But in any case, Silent Witnesses, Civilian Camp Money of World War II, they've already published, and I think it's available from BNR Press or
It was.
maybe Books or Amazon as well. So good luck for that. And then they will have a forthcoming publication on the World War II internment camps in America as well. So look forward to that.
This is all new, basically. New to us, anyway.
So
All
great.
right, well, looking for a question or two. I'm looking at the QA, and feel free, guys out there.
Yeah. Great to see the next generation getting in on this.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
There's a question from J.L. Dotson. I am from Arkansas and found the talk very interesting. Thank you. Start looking for items. Please let us know if you find them. Thank you. I will start looking for items. Okay. There's a question. Is this another one or is it the same one? Same one. Okay. All right. We can use a couple of more questions out there. We've had 3 so far. How about a couple of more? We have time.
And with people, there's no source for information. I would guess this stuff could just show up anywhere in a flea market or garage sale or who knows.
Yeah.
And probably some of it on eBay too, I would think.
I've done a few searches. Haven't found anything yet, but you're probably right, Len, that there's going to be stuff to be found. Okay. Well, another question. The fourth one is from Bill. Hello, Bill Myers. Sears mail order forms required ration coupons. So there are probably ration books 1 to 4 issued to the internees. Well, for sure we know one is because we have an image of it, Bill. I'm not sure about 1 to 4 though.
We did see references to them in the newspapers. And I think, and we've seen examples again from some of the online databases at libraries of all of the ration books issued to the internees. But that was the only one that we saw in the museum.
We do have 2 other questions. Joe, and thank you, Joe. Tell us something about Katie. So Katie is a junior physics student at Coe College. The last name is Amiko. So she is actually Japanese American. Her father's Japanese, her mother is actually American. And the father's from Okinawa. A very, very fine student and has really helped the project a lot. Very good, as is the case, the newer generations are much better at searching for information in databases and so on. And she has helped. Ray's pretty good too. I'm more Neanderthal about that. But Ray and Katie is really good at that. So she's now much more interested in numismatics as a result. And she was great on the trip. Okay, Jay Dodson.
She would have joined for this, but she's actually on a trip this weekend to Chicago. So she will be joining with some of the presentations that we're doing moving forward.
Her class went to the Art Institute in Chicago. Now that I know this stuff is out there, I will be looking for Jay Dodson. Thank you. Darrow Atchinson. A nice complimentary statement about what he calls a fantastic talk. Thank you very much. However, I found interesting that all the comments you posted throughout the presentation were pretty positive in tone. That's an interesting comment. It makes you wonder if any of it has been sanitized as propaganda. I don't think at the museum the stuff was sanitized. And, I'll apologize. I thought we were just presenting the facts. I didn't realize it sounded so positive. We actually had a slide, which didn't quite make the cut. Maybe can you show the slide of what it actually looked like in the camp, which is not too positive, actually.
The muddy slide.
Yeah, the muddy slide.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll add not a positive place to be.
Yeah, I think the last quotes, the ones about Crystal City, I would actually guess were probably more propaganda quotes. I think those came at the time, people saying, we've got plenty to eat. The descriptions we had heard elsewhere about that rice, for example, it wasn't like, and what a great experience to try out the other rice, and now we got the rice that we wanted. Thank you. I think there were much more complaints and frustrations with how the food worked, but the people in Crystal City were in a very tenuous position. And so I think those quotes, were coming at the time. And it might have been a little tricky.
Let me also
sorry.
Find the image if you can, Ray.
I will find the image. I mean, the image, yeah, the description of the bugs and the description of the life. I mean, people were frustrated. They were restless, they were angry, they lost everything. And actually it was very interesting because we found this Wilson farm story about whether people would stay. And so we asked the question at the museum, how many people did stay after the war? And the answer, or in the long term, I guess, the families that settled there, and the answer was there was one couple that stayed. So it wasn't people weren't thrilled to be there. The weather wasn't great. They had the tornadoes and the hurricanes and all of the stuff.
And the barracks were not insulated. They were thrown up. It only took them 3 months to build the entire camp. So they were thrown up. Privacy was limited. Space was limited in the barracks. Each camp had about 8,000 people for each of those farms. To give you an idea. So I don't think it was very positive. I should mention also that there was a lawsuit brought about the legality of it, which I mentioned to you. It went all the way to the Supreme Court, which at the time of the war ruled in favor of the government. All right, now we have a comment from Bill Myers. Were the internees required to turn in the U.S. currency? I don't believe so. Before leaving for the camps. In fact, they were able to buy stuff with their U.S. currency, like from the Sears catalog. They didn't use ration, or they used ration coupons, but they had to have money too. Was it illegal?
Yeah, that
Was
was that was a difference between the European camps and the US camps. But it was interesting in that video that we showed the clip from, that starts with people arriving and taking and having their valuables put into a safe in exchange for a receipt. So there was some amount of not keeping all of your items.
But I will say also, going sort of back to Daryl's comment as well, you know, there are all sorts of high school yearbooks that we saw, and those were a bit sanitized, and that, you know, they're like everybody else's high school. Good luck, good wishes. I should mention, I did mention the 442nd, but maybe I didn't mention that was a way to get out of the camp. So a lot of the Japanese Americans who could join the army to get out of the camp while their families lived there. So here's another slide. Much dignity lost its seat here, a little pun there. But look at the conditions of the camp in that picture. Bad Days at Rower, by the way, is the title. And of course, they slipped and they fell, and it was miserable. So that doesn't, that's a, and here's another one about an inmate who can still smile. So
That wasn't an inmate, that was a teacher. But another thing was very,
how bad it was.
another thing that was very complicated, especially in the early days, was that because things really weren't ready, there was a lot of shame in the setup, including that, you know, so families were put together. There'd be a large room, and then there would be families sort of with areas of that room, but without any privacy. And the bathrooms had no doors or coverings. And so there were actually a lot of descriptions about the shame there. And they started by people would have like a cardboard box, and basically you'd go into the latrine, which was this, you know, wide open space with multiple toilets, and you'd bring a large cardboard box to cover yourself. But it was very dehumanizing. And I mean, our talk, you know, we're talking about the co-op, which was a really positive thing that the inmates did, you know, to take back some of the power of what was happening and to be able to have some control. But the overall situation, they lost their homes, their businesses, their families. You know, there was an interesting example of that we didn't include, but of somebody who had left the camp and actually chose to come back because it was very hard during the war with the amount of racism and so on. Sort of both places were bad. Anyway.
There is a comment from Joe Bowling, which is very interesting to read. A Japanese American store in Auburn, Washington, was transferred to a U.S. citizen for $1. After the war, the buyer sold it back to the Japanese American prior owner for $1. When asked why he would do that, he replied that he had been interned as a German national during World War I, and his property had been cared for by a non-internee for him. He was paying it forward. That's a very nice comment, Joe. We need more people like that, that's for sure, in this world. Okay. So is that it? We got several comments. The Q&A is empty at the moment. So I think unless somebody has a question in the next few seconds, oh, there is one. This will be the last one, though, because I know that Len has to move us forward here. From Bill Myers, the German POW camp at Camp Bullis, Texas, had the same type of latrines, and I stayed in the POW barracks for Army training. So we have firsthand knowledge, shall we say. Thank you, Bill. Okay, Len, it's all yours.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. Appreciate you being on here today. We have 2 additional sessions. Mark Borghardt is speaking on EAC history at 5 p.m. And then we're going to wrap up with Bill Bear speaking on Una and the Lion at 6:30 p.m. So Steve and Ray, thanks a lot. And we'll see you hopefully soon at a coin show.
Excellent. I'd love to see you and everybody else. Thanks.